From 15 News, this is breaking news.
And we do have a breaking update from Platteville Police just within the last hour. Police have now identified the body that was found in a wooded area earlier this week as 43-year-old Derek Eastlick. Two people found Eastlick's body as they were walking near a trail on Monday night. Police still do not know his cause of death or why his body was in this wooded area in the first place. Eastlick's last contact with Platteville Police was back on August 16th when he ran away from a traffic stop. He was a passenger in that vehicle. Eastlick at the time had a warrant out for his arrest. Officers were not able to find him after he ran away. If you have any information on where Eastlick was before this week, you are asked to contact Platteville Police.